Hi folks, so this video is going to be a bit of a departure from what I normally do, and if you like it, let me know, and maybe in the future I'll do more videos like this. So in a couple weeks I'll be going on my first backpacking trip on the Appalachian Trail for 2021. I've been on the AT before, of course, but this will be my first trip for 2021. And all totaled, I will probably do 5 or 6 trips on the AT this year. So what I thought I would do in this video is sort of take you on a tour of the current gear setup that I use when I go backpacking on the AT. So I'm sure you want me to jump right in and start showing you the gear, but I do need to talk for just a couple minutes in order to give you a little bit of background on myself in terms of backpacking, and also give you a little bit of context for what you're going to see, because when it comes to backpacking, context is everything. The gear that you pack is influenced by so many things, and so there really is no one-size-fits-all backpacking solution. So as of the making of this video, I am 45 years old. I was raised here in Georgia, and I still live in Georgia. And I started backpacking as a kid when I would go to summer camp. And as a kid, summer camp was usually in the North Georgia mountains or in the mountains of western North Carolina. That's where I did most of my backpacking as a kid, and still today, that's where I do the majority of my backpacking trips. I didn't do any backpacking or hiking through high school or college, but once I settled down and got married and had a kid, I got back into it, and that was around 2005, so 16 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since. Now, having said that, I would never consider myself to be an expert or professional backpacker by any means. I am experienced, I know my way around, and above all, I'm very comfortable with where I'm at right now. So I'm not doing this video to give or get advice. I'm just showing you the gear that I use, and you can take it for what it is. You can completely disregard it, or you can cherry pick some ideas. It's entirely up to you. Hey, Chessie. Anyway, the funny thing is that even though I've been backpacking in North Georgia and Western North Carolina for many, many years, up until a couple years ago, I had never actually been on the AT. I'd been all around it, but never actually on it. And so a couple years ago, I decided to finally start doing some sections of the AT. Now, I'm not in a position to do a through hike of the Appalachian Trail or even a long sectional hike. So most of my trips are usually between 1 and 3 nights. Every now and then I might be able to take a week off work and do a 5 or 6 day backpacking trip. But for the most part, they're usually 1 to 3 nights, and this setup is geared around that. So let's talk about the weight. The base weight of my current setup right here is just over 20 pounds, right around 20 pounds, 8 ounces, give or take an ounce or so. And if you're new to backpacking, base weight is the weight of your pack minus consumables. So it's the weight of your pack without food, fuel, or water. And the reason we don't measure food, fuel, or water is because they vary so much. I mean, the weight of your food on day 1 is a lot different than the weight of your food on the last day of your trip. And so for that reason, we don't measure consumables when calculating the weight of a pack. So the base weight of this setup is just over 20 pounds. That's right on the cusp of a lightweight setup. I believe the threshold for a lightweight setup is 20 pounds or less. And then below that, you've got ultralight and hyperlight. Now, I have no interest in being an ultralight or hyperlight backpacker at this point because I like to have certain luxuries such as hot beverages and hot meals and so forth. And so I'm willing to carry the extra weight to have those conveniences. So I'm pretty happy with my base weight now, but it wasn't always like that. My first backpacking trip as an adult back in 2005, oh my God, I was so overpacked. I think my base weight must have been over 40 pounds, probably closer to 50 pounds, which was a nightmare to carry over mountainous trails, at least for me. And so fairly quickly, I started to drop stuff from that setup to try to get my base weight down. And that's fairly typical. When you're new to backpacking, you tend to overpack drastically because, as the saying goes, you pack your fears. And when you're new to backpacking, you worry about a lot of stuff, and so you pack a lot of stuff. And one of the nice things about backpacking is that as you gain more experience and more confidence, it sort of becomes an exercise in minimalism, and you learn that a lot of those things you thought you needed, you really don't. Typically, there are 2 major ways to reduce the weight of your pack. The first and cheapest method is simply to not pack extraneous gear that you don't really need. That'll save a lot of weight. And then the other method is to pack lighter gear. Unfortunately, most of the time, the lighter something is, the more expensive it is. And so obviously, you have to balance the desire for lighter gear with what you can afford. Now, if you're new to backpacking, You'll often hear experienced backpackers sort of bragging about their pack weights, their base weights, and at first it may come off as a little bit snobbish and condescending, but it really isn't. When you're an experienced backpacker, your base weight sort of becomes a point of pride, and it becomes a personal challenge to see just how much weight you can shave off your setup and still have everything you need. But the bottom line is that, as I always say, unless you're asking someone else to carry your pack for you, it's really nobody else's business but yours what you carry and how much it weighs. So, if you feel you need to carry 30 pounds of gear and you're okay carrying it, more power to you. Go ahead and do it. But yeah, like I said, my base weight for this setup is just over 20 pounds, which I'm very happy with. And this is meant for trips where I'm hiking between 10 and 25 miles. If I'm going on a longer hike or a more difficult hike, I can swap a few items out in this setup and get that base weight down to about 18 or 19 pounds. And I'll talk about that when we go through the gear. So finally, now let's start going through the gear. So first up, we'll talk about the gear right next to my pack, my shoes. So I used these boots for many, many years. They're made by Loa and they're still really good. But last year I decided to give trail runners a try. And so I got these Topo, what are they called? Topo TerraVenture 2s. And I've taken these on about 4 trips now and they have been fantastic. I love these things. And so I don't see myself switching from these for quite a while. They're great. Then I've got my trekking poles and I've had these forever. I probably got these when I got back into backpacking around 2005 or 2006. These are Black Diamond Switchbacks. They're probably not the lightest trekking poles ever made, but they've always worked great and I really have never felt a need to replace them. All right, now let's talk about the pack. So the pack that I'm currently using here is a Z-Packs Arc Haul Zip, which I believe is a 64-liter pack. This is a fairly recent addition. I got it last year and it's been on 2 or 3 trips now, and so far so good. I really like it. The main reason I got the Arc Haul Zip was for weight savings. My previous pack that I used for many years was a Gregory Baltoro, and the Baltoro is a great pack, but it's a little bit heavy. The pack itself weighs 6 pounds, whereas the Arc Haul Zip here weighs under 2 pounds. So yeah, in one step I was able to shave 4 pounds off my base weight by going with the Arc Haul Zip, which to me was a big deal. Now, of course, the Z-Packs packs are not quite as luxurious as packs made by Gregory and Osprey and so forth, but they're not supposed to be. They're very minimalist in order to save weight, and for me, the weight savings was what was important. So the Arc Haul Zip has the straps down here where I've got my tent, and then it's got 2 bottle pockets on either side, some straps on either side. There's a zippered compartment on the front, and then there's another zipper that allows you to access the main compartment. And then the main access for the main compartment up here is a roll top access, which I like a lot. So let's turn this around and look at the other side. So the front looks pretty ordinary. Now, the reason this series of packs is called the Arc series is because the pack actually bends a little bit to form an arc back here that gives you a little bit of space, a little bit of ventilation between the pack and your body. And that's done with these tension poles that are on either side. It's pretty cool. So on this strap, I've got a whistle within easy reach. And then I've got my drinking tube that goes to a water bladder in the top of the pack. And then I've got over on this strap a little canister of pepper spray. I've never had to use it, and it may surprise some of you to know that this is the most defensive item I have in this setup, at least. I don't have any guns or even a really big survival knife because, in my opinion, it's just not necessary for going on the AT, but I do have this just in case. Now, one of the neat things about Z-Packs packs is that in their default configuration, they're very bare bones in order to be as light as possible. And then if you want to, if you're willing to take on the extra weight, you can order add-ons to add to the pack as you wish. So I've got a little add-on stash pouch here, and then I've also got hip pouches on either side down here. They also make a lumbar pad that you can add on for extra lumbar support, but I don't have that right now. So let's see what's on this side. I don't think there's anything in here right now. Oh, I got some tissues in here. But ordinarily I keep my driver's license and maybe a little bit of cash in here, and then any other random small things I might need quick access to. You know, chapstick or something like that. And then over here is where I keep my cell phone, but of course it's not in there at the moment. So let's see what is in there. I've got a small towel, a little microfiber towel. And then I've got a knife. And this is the largest knife that I have in this configuration. I usually carry 2 knives with me on the AT. I carry a small Victorinox Mini Champ in my pocket, and then I carry a folding knife. And the one I'm using right now is an Ontario Rat 1, which is a very nice knife. I like it. Now again, it may surprise some of you to know that I don't have a giant survival knife in this configuration, or bear spray, or gun, or something like that, and that all I have for defense is really the pepper spray. But over the years, I've realized that that's all I need, at least when I'm on the AT. Now, there are other places where I go camping where I do bring a big survival knife and stuff like that, but on the AT, I found that it's really not necessary. But of course, like I said before, they say that you pack your fears. And so if you feel that you need bear spray and a gun and a big survival knife and all that stuff, by all means bring them, but just know that you're going to have to carry them. I love to carry a giant survival knife and all that stuff, but I just don't want to carry the weight. And I found that on the AT, at least, it's really not necessary. At least I don't think it's necessary. Again, you can bring whatever you want. So let's turn this around again. So in this pocket, I have an empty Smart water bottle. I believe this is 700 milliliters, yeah. And in this configuration, I typically keep this empty while I'm hiking, and I only use it once I actually set up my camp. We'll talk more about this in a couple minutes when we get inside. And then on the other side in this pocket, I have a Sierra Designs rain jacket that I've had forever. It works really well. There are probably lighter alternatives nowadays, and at some point I may upgrade and get a lighter rain jacket, but for now this will do just fine. All right, now we come to the tent, and for this configuration, when I'm going to be sleeping by myself, as I will be on the next trip, I like to bring this Nemo Hornet 2P. That's the 2-person version of the Nemo Hornet. Now, of course, I could bring a 1-person tent, and I might do that if I was going on a really long trip where I really wanted to save as much weight as possible. But I tend to like to bring a 2-person tent if possible, because I like to have the extra space. Not only am I a tall, big guy, but I also like to store my gear in the tent. And with a 1-person tent, it gets pretty cramped pretty quickly. The Hornet is a semi-freestanding double-walled tent, and I like to use double-walled tents when I can, even though it does add a little bit of weight, because when you're camping up in the mountains of North Carolina for 3 days, it's a pretty good bet you're going to get rain at some point, and with a double-walled tent, it eliminates a lot of the condensation issues that you get with single-walled tents. So yeah, I've had this for a while now, and it's been in several downpours, and I've always stayed dry. I've actually got several Nemo tents in my arsenal for different configurations, and if I'm going with a different amount of people, and they are all excellent. I've never had any issues with Nemo's products. They're not super cheap, but they're not the most expensive either. I think this cost me about $375, which, yeah, is not cheap, but there are certainly more expensive tents out there. Now, if I was going to go with a girlfriend or otherwise going to be sharing the tent with somebody, I would swap this out for my MSR Hubba Hubba NX, which is also a 2-person tent, but it's a little roomier, although it does add a little weight. That one's just under 4 pounds. All right, now we're getting into the pack itself, starting with this little zipper pouch on the front. So first up, we have a puffer jacket for when it gets a little cold. This is something I might leave behind if I was going in the middle of summer, but when I go in a couple of weeks, it's still going to be a little chilly at night. So this is nothing fancy. I think I got this at the Eddie Bauer outlet store. It's a little Eddie Bauer puffer jacket. Probably not the lightest puffer jacket ever made, but it works just fine. And maybe at some point in the future, I'll upgrade to something a little lighter, maybe something from Arc'teryx or something. Up next, I've got some cordage. This is about 50 feet or so of 550 paracord. It's a nice bright color that's easy to see. And ordinarily, I use this to put up a bear line at the end of the night to keep my food bag out of the reach of bears. Then we've got a saw. This is a Baco Laplander saw. It's a really nice, compact, fairly lightweight saw. It works really well. I've been very happy with this. And this is one of those items where I tried not taking it on a trip to see if I could do without it, to do without the weight, and I found that I missed it, and so I started packing it again. Really helps when you're trying to cut up wood to make a campfire. The Baco Laplander. Let's see, then I've got a pair of gloves, just in case it gets chilly. These are black diamond gloves. I've got a mask just in case I see other people or feel a need to wear a face mask at some point. I usually don't wear this when I'm out on the trail, but you know, if you go into town or something, you might need something like that. I've got a little scoop to help dig a hole if I need to go take a poop. I got this a while ago. It's the Deuce number 2 ultralight trowel, 0.6 ounces. It's okay. I haven't been that happy with this, and most likely I will probably go back to just a standard plastic trowel at some point, but that's what I've got in there right now. And by the way, the reason I haven't been that happy with it is that this works just fine if you're digging in normal soil that doesn't have any rocks or roots, but when you get to soil that's got rocks and roots, this becomes a real pain in the butt real quick because it just doesn't have a lot of power to it. Here's my headlamp, and this is just a very basic, cheap headlamp. I might be upgrading this to something a little better later on, but it works just fine. It's a Bushnell headlamp, and I got a 2-pack of these at Sam's Club for like 20 bucks, and it works great. It's nice and bright. It's got a red light for at night if you don't want to disturb other people. So yeah. Now, one thing I like to do with my headlamps is when I pack them, I put a little piece of paper between the contacts of one of the batteries, and that prevents it from being accidentally turned on while it's in my pack. I've actually had that happen before, and I got to my campsite and the batteries were almost completely drained from the thing. Then I've got this bag, which I call a technology bag. It's a little dry bag made by Sea to Summit, I think. Yeah. So let's see what we've got in here. So here's a battery to recharge my phone. This is an Anker PowerCore Lite 10,000 milliamps. Then I've got a couple cords. So I've got a lightning cord for my iPhone, and then I've got a micro USB cord just in case. Then I've got 3 extra AAA batteries. That's for the headlamp. I've got a small thing of Repel 100 insect repellent. Protects for up to 10 hours. So there it is. And then I've got some Body Glide, which is really useful to prevent chafing. I use this all the time when I'm backpacking. I wouldn't go without it. Great stuff. And lastly, I've got a little thing of TP here. I do have more deeper in the pack, but I like to keep one roll of TP and the trowel easily accessible in this outer pocket, just in case I need them while I'm hiking. All right, now we come to the grand finale, the main compartment. So let's go ahead and roll it open. And you can access the main compartment with this pack by unzipping this zipper down here, but I'm not going to do that because I've got everything in a waterproof bag inside. All right, so up first, I've got my water bag, and this is connected to my drinking tube right now. So this serves double duty. When I'm hiking, I will put a little bit of water in here. It's a 2-liter bag, but I usually won't put the full 2 liters in there while I'm hiking. I might put a liter in there. And then when I get to my campsite and I set up my camp, well, then I will put a different attachment on here and hang this from a branch or a tree, and it'll become a water reservoir so I can get water easily for cooking and drinking and stuff like that. And that'll make more sense when we get further down and you see the rest of the water gear. All right, then we've got this bag. This is my food bag, and right now there's not much in it because I haven't packed the food yet. That's the last thing I packed. So the only thing in here right now, I believe, is my kitchen bag. Yeah. So this is an REI Kitchen Essentials bag that I've had forever. And let's take a look inside. It's got a little hook here so you can hang it if you want to, but I rarely do that. I can't remember what was in here when I bought it. It may have been empty, but whatever was in there, it's not in there anymore. I've put my own stuff in here over the years. So first up, I've got the most important thing in any camping kitchen setup, and that is hot sauce. Texas Pete in my case. Then I've got 2 bottles of coffee creamer, that creamer powder stuff. And I need to refill these because this one is empty and this one is about 3/4 full. I like to have a lot of coffee creamer with me. Then I've got some beverages in this pouch here, so let's take a look. There's a couple other things too. So I've got some tin foil just as a backup in case my stove fails. And then I've got a bunch of tea and coffee in here. So I've got, let's see here, green tea, chai tea, chai tea, chai tea, green tea, chai tea. Then I've got 1, 2, 3 coffees, the Starbucks Via coffees. I've got an MRE lemonade. I'll probably add one more before I go out. And then I've got three packs of Splenda and 2 packs of lemon. So that's my beverage setup. My hot beverage setup, I should say, and my lemonade setup. Most of the time I'm just drinking water, but it's always good to have some hot beverage materials with you. Oh, by the way, this empty spot right here, in previous years, I used to have this stuff called Camp Suds, which is like an environmentally friendly dish soap, but I never used it, and so eventually I just stopped carrying it, and I haven't missed it. You really don't need things like soap and shampoo and all that kind of stuff. You can bring them if you want, but they're really unnecessary, in my opinion. All right, then I've got some silverware in here. I've got a long spoon for my freeze-dried food pouches. Get that long spoon and get all the way down in there. And I usually eat out of the pouches. As you'll see, I don't have a plate or a bowl or anything like that. Then I've got 2 sporks, and if I'm going by myself, I will take one of these out. This is from the last time I went out when I had my girlfriend with me, but going by myself in a couple weeks, I will probably take one of these out. But yeah, these are titanium sporks made by Snow Peak, and this spoon is made by REI. And then I've got a couple things of spices in here. I've got some cayenne pepper here, which I've never used. And then I've also got some Montreal steak seasoning as well. And next up, I've got my clothes bag. So another dry bag. Just got all my clothes in it, except for the gloves. Sometimes I have a beanie up here, and of course the puffer jacket. And again, some of you may be surprised by how little clothes I have. Some of you might think I have too much. But in my opinion, you really don't need that much extra clothes when you go out. You know, the clothes that I bring, it's more about, well, 2 things. Number 1, it's about having clothes for if it gets cold. And number 2, it's about having some dry clothes in case I get wet. But having clothes just to have fresh, clean clothes, that's really not the biggest concern. So first up, I've got a thin, long sleeve shirt made of polyester. There is no cotton in this bag at all because cotton's pretty much the worst thing you can bring with you when you're camping, because if it gets wet, you're pretty much screwed. Anyway, so my son plays baseball for Georgia Tech, so I've got a Georgia Tech long sleeve shirt. Then I've got, let's see, an extra pair of pants, dry pair of pants. And I like these pants because they can be converted to shorts. There's a little zipper on each side, so if it gets hot or something, you can change them into shorts. And when these get wet, they dry very fast. These ones are made by Columbia. I've also got some that are made by REI. Then I've got a spare shirt, a button-down shirt. Again, no cotton. This material dries really fast if it gets wet. Just a black button-up shirt. Then I've got some thermal underwear. These are long thermals. Then I've got a thermal shirt, which is made by Smart Wool. There it is, long sleeve. I've got a little beanie. Then I've got a spare pair of underwear. And I love this brand of underwear for hiking. It's called Ex Officio, and it's sort of an anti-chafing type of underwear. And it is fantastic. I've got 2 or 3 pairs of these, and I always bring them when I backpack. I've got a spare pair of socks, and these ones are made by Darn Tough. And they actually have a lifetime guarantee. If they ever get holes in them or anything, they will actually replace them free of charge. And then finally, I've got my pillow for when I sleep. It's a Sea to Summit Eros pillow, ultralight large. It's pretty small, and it inflates up into a pretty good sized pillow. And that's it for the clothing bag. Next, I've got this little blue bag that's attached to the inside of the pack. This was an add-on that I bought from Z-Packs. It doesn't come with the Arcall zip, but I put it in there and it does detach. And inside this bag, I've got my repair gear. So I've got duct tape, zip ties, spare buckles, a little tent pole repair thing, some repair stuff for a tent window. I've also got a repair kit for my sleeping pad, some stretchy cord, all sorts of stuff that you might need to repair gear in the field. And it all fits into that little bag and attaches like that. Okay, the rest of my gear is in a dry bag that's inside the pack. So I'm gonna go ahead and open that up. I like to make sure everything is nice and protected from any water. Okay, so I've got a pair of flip-flops. I like to have these for when I set up camp, just walking around, or if I have to get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, they're nice to have. Next, we've got my jet boil that I use to boil water, of course. This is the Jet Boil Minimo, which is a newer edition. I've got an older jet boil that I've had forever, but I got this a year or two ago and decided to start taking it out with me. So all the food that I bring with me when I'm backpacking is either freeze-dried or ready to eat. And so whether I want a hot beverage or a hot meal, all I need is boiling water. And the jet boil has always been dependable. It's never failed me. It's easy to use. And it's also not as subject to environmental conditions like wind and so forth. And so I've always liked bringing it. Now, it is a little bit on the heavy side. And for that reason, if I'm going for a lighter setup, if I'm going on a longer trek, I can swap this out for a more ultralight cooking setup. That's a Snow Peak ultralight stove and a cup that goes on top. And that weighs about half of what the jet boil weighs. But the jet boil is so convenient and it works so well that when I can, I try to bring it. So there is a fuel canister inside here, and then I've got another one deeper in the bag. If I was going on a shorter trip, I'd just bring one fuel canister, but on the next trip, I'll be bringing two just in case. Up next, I've got a sit pad made by Thermarest. It's kind of a luxury item, but it makes sitting on a rock or a log or even the ground a little more comfortable. And it doesn't weigh very much. Then I've got my fire bag. So let's see what's in the fire bag. All right, first up, I've got this stuff called Hot Snot, and it's basically a fire gel, fire lube in a tube. Fast, clean fire. And I actually got this in one of my battle boxes last year, and I took it on a trip, and it proved invaluable for starting a fire when you've got some wet wood. And I've brought it ever since, and I love it. I've used it 2 or 3 times now when I've had to deal with a little bit of wet wood, and it works great. Then I've got a little bag of fat wood for tinder for building a fire. This stuff works fantastic. If you don't know what fat wood is, look it up. I've got a butane lighter. Got a few things of cotton tinder, although I've never used it, and I will probably drop this at some point because I have the fat wood, and that's way better than cotton tinder. I've got some waterproof matches. And then I've got a ferro rod and striker. Up next, I've got my water filter system. So in this configuration, I've got a Platypus Gravity Works system. And then I've got this little bag that has a couple attachments. This one goes with the Platypus Gravity Works. This one is a spigot, and when I get to camp, I'll take that red water bag that you saw, I'll take the drinking tube off and put the spigot on, and I'll hang it on a tree, and that way I have a nice little reserve of water, and I can easily get water from the spigot. And then when I get camp set up, that's when the empty smart water bottle comes into play, because I can use that to store clean water and have some portable clean water that I can take on a short hike away from base camp, and I can also take it into the tent at night. Now, I know this whole water setup may seem a little convoluted to some, but like I said, there's a reason why I have everything in this setup. And on my next hiking trip, that's going to be a group hike, and I'm going to be leading the group. And when I'm going on a trip where I'm going to be leading other people, I like to have the option to share my clean water with other people in my group if it becomes necessary. And it has become necessary in the past. I've had someone forget their water filter, as strange as that seems. I've had someone's water filter break. And so I like to have a little insurance and have the option to easily share my clean water with other people in my group. And the water bag and the gravity filter help me do that. If I was going on a solo trip by myself, I would probably ditch most of this stuff and just have the smart water bottle and a Sawyer squeeze and nothing else. Up next, I've got my toiletry bag. And by the way, I'm aware that I have a lot of bags within bags. It's something that I'm trying to reduce over time, but I still have some work to do. So I've got some TP, another roll of TP. I've got a little porta towel. It's one of those little towels that you get wet and they expand. I've got a toothbrush. And then in this bag, I've got some of these dental floss thingies and some Q-tips. Then I've got a little compact hairbrush and mirror. Got a little thing of toothpaste. A thing of chapstick. I'll probably move this up to one of my hip pockets at some point. And then finally, an extra hairband because I do have long hair, and if the one in my hair breaks, it's nice to have a spare. Up next, I've got this cup, and inside is my first aid kit, which among other things contains sunscreen and my personal medications. And then I've got this Snow Peak 450 titanium cup. I like having a dedicated cup for my coffee and tea. And also, this serves as a backup if my cooking system should fail. I can always boil water in this cup on top of a fire. And speaking of my cooking system, here's that extra bottle of fuel. And then the last two items involve sleep. So first up is my sleeping pad. And right now I'm using a Thermarest Neo Air X Lite. It's a very nice lightweight sleeping pad. And then lastly, we've got my sleeping bag, or sleeping quilt, I should say. I switched to a quilt last year and I love it. And I think I'm going to be using a quilt from now on pretty much. So this is a Z-Packs 10 degree solo quilt. It's very warm. When I go backpacking in a couple weeks, the temperature at night is going to get down into the lower 30s, possibly upper 20s. And so this will keep me nice and warm. Now, if the forecast changes, or if I was going at a different time of year where it was going to be warmer, I would swap this out for this quilt. This is a Z-Packs 30 degree solo quilt. And because of that, it's a little smaller and a little lighter in weight. So that would actually bring my base weight down. But for this upcoming trip, I'm going to stick with the 30 degree quilt unless the forecast changes. And with that, ladies and gents, that is all the gear in my current setup for my next backpacking trip, except of course, food and water. Hey folks, so I wasn't able to finish the video before leaving for my trip. So right now I'm on the AT between Waya Bald and the Cold Spring Shelter in North Carolina. It's pretty chilly, and actually a little while ago we were getting some freezing rain, but I'm having a lot of fun and everything's going smoothly, and of course the gear setup is working just fine as I expected. So I will finish this video when I get home. I don't want to spend too much time on this trip shooting video because I want to enjoy the outdoors and enjoy the experience and not worry about filming a bunch of video. And plus, I don't have a ton of extra batteries and all that kind of stuff. But so I'll finish this when I get home, which for me will be in 2 or 3 days, but for you will be about 2 seconds. So see you then. Oh, wow. It is so windy and rainy up here on this ridge. Wow. Nice view. All right. This is the last peak before going down to the NOC. It's awesome. Spring water, best water there is. All right, I'm back home and I had a great time, and actually I'm kind of glad that I didn't quite get this video done before I went on my trip, because now I can sort of give you a quick post-trip report. So everything went great. I did make a couple last-minute gear changes because the day before we left, the forecast was indicating that there would be severe thunderstorms on the second day, and indeed there were. And so to prepare for that, I removed my Sierra Designs rain jacket and ran over to Walmart and bought one of those Frog Togs lightweight rain suits. It added a few ounces to my base weight, but it was well worth it because it did rain quite a lot on the second day. and we had to hike in the rain, and the rain suit helped keep me nice and dry. Also, because of the forecast, I added an extra pair of socks just to be safe, and I also swapped out the Nemo Hornet tent bag for a Z-Packs dry bag just to help keep the tent as dry as possible during transit. But of course, in this particular situation, the dry bag for the tent didn't do me much good because it started raining at about 6 in the morning when we were all asleep in our tents. And while I was in the tent, I was nice and dry and warm and cozy. But later on, we had to pack up all our gear in the pouring rain, and so the tent ended up getting drenched anyway. And then later that day, when it stopped raining and the sun came out, I was able to pull the tent out and get it dried off a little bit. And then even later that day, when we set up camp for the second night, I was able to clean it up and dry it off and have another nice, warm, dry, cozy night in the tent. It did rain the second night as well, but not nearly as bad as it did earlier that day. And then the only other thing to report is that I ended up losing one of my dry bags in transit. I think it happened somewhere between the Cold Spring shelter and the Wesser Bald shelter. It must have happened when we took a break, but I ended up losing my toiletry bag. And at the time, my headlamp was in the toiletry bag, so I lost my headlamp as well as my TP and toothbrush and toothpaste and all that stuff. And so I had to improvise for the rest of the trip. I didn't brush my teeth, of course. I had to use the light on my cell phone as a makeshift headlamp. And then I had to borrow some TP from other people in my group. Well, I would have had to borrow if it became necessary, but fortunately it never did. Now, when we got to the end of our trip at the NOC, the Nantahala Outdoor Center, they've got an outfitter store that caters to hikers because a lot of hikers come through there. And so while I was there, I went in there and replaced my headlamp and also a few of the toiletries as well. So here's that new headlamp that I got. This is a Black Diamond Spot. It's 350 lumens, works really well, and is fairly lightweight. And then here's my new toiletry bag. I had some extra dry bags on hand, so now my tech bag is blue, my toiletry bag is green, and my fire bag is red. Anyway, that's about all I have to say for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making it. My next trip on the AT will be in about 4 weeks. Now, if you like these types of videos, let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll do more backpacking related videos in the future. But for now, that's it. I'm Eric Siegel. This is Kit Bashed Survival. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.